The moon looked too good to ignore this morning. I told myself I'd keep it simple, but things never stay simple when gear gets involved.
Well, I think carrying the big tripod with me was not a very good idea this morning. Every morning I go for a walk, about 8 kilometers. It's a habit I picked up 3 years ago after a stomach issue forced me to take my health seriously and lose some weight. That's how this morning walk became part of my routine, usually well before sunrise. My favorite mornings to walk are when I get to catch the moonset, especially when there's a full moon. If the moonset happens close to sunrise, that's the ideal condition for photographing the moon, because it won't just be a glowing circle in the sky. I can include elements from the city in the frame, which gives the whole composition more meaning. The downside? I have to carry a lot more gear. Unlike most mornings when I'm just out with my keys and phone. The tripod is essential for stable moonshots, especially since I use a heavy telephoto lens. But honestly, it's my least favorite piece of gear to carry. It barely fits in my bag and takes time to set up. More than once, I have brought it and ended up not using it, relying instead on my backpack for stabilization or a much smaller tripod. I generally prefer to stay light and solve problems as I go. Instead of dragging gear I'll only use 5% of the time. Since I always carry a backpack or a sling, I just swing it in front of me and use it to get steadier shots. Much better than handheld footage, and it gives extra purpose to something I'm already carrying. I've realized that the hardest part about shooting during a full moon is deciding photo or video. It's even harder when I try to do both while also filming myself doing it. With all that on my mind and the tripod slowing me down, some shots ended up with me almost completely out of frame. But I didn't let that stop me. I kept chasing the moon as it dropped lower and lower toward the horizon, reminding me that my time was running out. Since my main focus is photographing and not filming the moon, I use the Sony A7R Mark III, which I bought back in 2019, I think. The high resolution helps, so I can crop the shot and make the moon appear even larger in the frame without losing too much quality. As for the lens, there's only one option, the 100 to 400 mm telephoto, one of my favorites. People sometimes stop me on the street and ask, how can I take a photo of the moon? I always tell them, if you are using a phone, it's going to be tough. They will likely be disappointed if they expect the kind of moonshots they see online or in magazines. Phone cameras don't have enough zoom, and they can't expose the moon properly, so it ends up as a bright white dot in the sky. Even worse, most people just zoom in afterward, trying to make it look bigger. Having good gear doesn't mean you'll get a good photo. If I want the image or the video to look visually pleasing, I need to think more creatively. The one thing that often makes the biggest difference is adding something in the foreground, something that gives the shot depth and scale. That's why I often drop down low to the ground and use my leg to stabilize the camera. It saves time and keeps me from having to set up the tripod repeatedly. No one really gets how fast the moon sets until they actually try to photograph it. The challenge isn't just the limited time. It's also that I don't want to take the same photo 10 times. I have to keep moving to find new, interesting compositions, and that eats up time too. So in the end, I don't come away with as many varied shots as I would like. Eventually, my time is up and I have to pack up the camera. In general, I get about 30 minutes of useful time to shoot the moon, photo or video, before the sunrise. Until then, The barely visible sun creates an evenly lit image that makes capturing the moon easier. The moon was one of the first subjects I found truly fascinating to photograph or film when I got my first camera about 10 years ago. But switching between photo and video used to throw me off. So I started looking for a faster way to change settings on the camera, allowing me to shoot both without missing the moment. Ideally, I would use two separate camera bodies, each pre-configured with its own settings, and have a camera ready to film and another ready to take pictures. But then I ran into another problem: swapping lenses. That takes up precious time, so most of the time I stick with one camera body and my favorite lens already mounted. I almost always shoot in aperture priority mode. I usually keep ISO on auto and adjust exposure using the compensation wheel. Technically, the correct way would be to shoot in full manual, including ISO. But I'd rather save time than obsess over micro adjustments in exposure, especially when that time could be spent getting 5 solid shots instead of 2 perfectly lit ones. One tool I really rely on to manage exposure is zebras. They help me avoid blowing out the moon, which is the focal point of the frame. Switching to video requires 2 key settings. First, I change the picture profile from off, used in photography, to picture profile 10, which stands for HLG mode, which gives me better dynamic range in video since I'm not shooting raw like I would with photos. Video is essentially like working with JPEGs. There's not much room to edit badly exposed footage later on. Second, I switch from full frame to Super 35 crop mode. It might sound like I'm reducing image quality by cropping, but on the Sony a7R, the cropped mode actually avoids pixel binning and produces cleaner video. I have set up a custom button so I can toggle between the 2 modes quickly. One of the fastest ways to adapt the camera is using the memory dials on the top of the body. These 3 memory presets let me load complete settings for specific shooting scenarios. No need to tweak everything manually each time. In a future episode, I'll explain how I have customized them. Getting the camera level is a small but crucial step, especially when time is tight. Unfortunately, Sony doesn't let you see the level indicator alongside all the other info on screen. So I assigned a custom button to quickly cycle between just 2 display modes, one with basic overlays and one with the level. There are about 5 or 6 display options, but I disabled all the others to make cycling faster. When I'm not racing the clock and I want to take at least one good photo of the moon, I use exposure bracketing. I typically shoot 3 exposures, each 0.5 EV apart. That way, even if I mess up slightly, I have one slightly brighter and one slightly darker version. Sometimes I'll merge them later into a single HDR image for better dynamic range. And of course, whenever I'm using a tripod, I shoot with a timer to avoid micro jitters from pressing the shutter. I see people with their phones trying to photograph the moon or the sunrise or the sunset, and I know 2 things. They probably won't be happy with the result, and that photo will likely sit on their phone, never looked at again. A lot of people just end up with hundreds of photos taking up space, only to be forgotten entirely when they switch phones. Instead, what I do is try to capture 2 or 3 completely different photos or video clips. A single photo doesn't tell a story, it's just the moon we all saw, and many others photographed too. But if I capture 3, 4, or even 5 different shots from different locations or with a different lens, suddenly I'm telling a story. And when I tell that story visually, it becomes something that stays with me and maybe even teaches someone else something in the process.